uninstall every video game you own, get that out of your life. That is a way for somebody to keep you maintained. That's all that is. That's a dopamine sink.
Yeah.
That's a sandbox of a dopamine that's not going to allow you to do anything. And for that, again, for that one Redditor commenter that says, well, there was 0.01% of those folks are going to be professional esports gamers and turn into millionaire streamers. Go do what you got to do. That's cool and get after it if that's your view. But for the rest of you guys, uninstall all your video games and just do things. And you're going to understand that that's the first step. And why I'm concerned about the youth is because we have 15-year-old kids right now that don't know how to plug a router into a modem. All right, welcome to a little ad hoc, impromptu, kind of Dean vaping, Tony talking, just do it type situation, type little mid-sentence, midweek recording. So for those of you guys who don't understand the context of the situation, we are in the middle of the week here. And typically we record things on Sunday, Sunday or Saturday, but right now we're actually going to impromptu record something on a Wednesday night. Just because we have a fresh idea here, but it's something that we've both kind of been thinking about as he zins up and I'm zanned up, if you will. But
No. Zins and Zans, bro.
But yeah, so
No
back
coffee today, though. No
right,
caffeine, but that's all right.
right. So Dean was talking to I believe it was a coworker or a colleague or something, and he had like kind of this kind of aha moment about basically the colleague was saying, hey, I want to jump into this thing, but I don't know like if I can do it. And you guys may be thinking, oh, you guys already talked about this. This is ship fast. But this is a different situation. This person was trying to figure out like the most optimal way to kind of send this kind of invoice to somebody. And Dean had done this like hundreds of times before in his past. So he was saying, well, here's what I did when I first wanted to learn how to like send an invoice. I'll look at the documentation. Like how has it been done before? Not in a copy paste style, but more of in a way where he's saying, let's just read kind of I can just do things. So at that time he said I can just do things. So kind of like instead of teaching a man to fish, teach a man what a fish actually is, and then teach a man like what a fishing rod is. So kind of I was just thinking we can talk about that in a maneuver context. So Dean, what do you think about like kind of how that scenario shaped the way you view things and how you get started on things, even with a ship fast context?
Yeah. So it's a good example because when you do submit an invoice, you don't really know what to put on it. I mean, you'll probably encounter stuff like that throughout your life. I mean, there's a thing you need to do. Okay, a good example also is like changing your oil in your car, right? Like you've heard that this is something. I mean, you got to do it, and you probably heard that it's not that hard to do, right? People have told you that, but then you're also thinking to yourself, yeah, but you're probably like a car person, like you've probably worked with stuff, about tools and all this stuff, and maybe you talk yourself out of doing it, and you go to Midas and pay $70 and have them do it for you instead, and like there's an argument for that because it's really convenient, and you don't need to. They'll check other stuff for you too, so it's like it's not really the end of the world. It's not a bad idea, but you can also just do it.
Yeah.
Like you could just find information on like what exactly you need to do, like what tools you'll need, and then just do it. Like with the invoice, yeah, there's certain information you want to put on the invoice, and even before you get to that point, you should have some of it already. Like you need like a tax ID and like or stuff like that. I mean, you don't necessarily put that on the invoice, but you'll need stuff like that anyway just to get paid. And you can just do it. You can just do it. You just look it
Yeah.
up.
And is
Part
this
of
something that you're taught in high school? No, right?
No,
You're
not
not
at
taught in
all.
high school
Yeah,
how to just do things. And I get that it's a
yeah,
different system and it's career building and it's career preparation and stuff. Half of it is that, and half of the other half is keeping the people that are, about to be military age men, keep them settled. But it
yeah,
turns into a thing of, is there a just do things university? The answer is, yeah, it is called real life. Okay. So everybody
yeah,
has had this
yeah,
moment where they said, hey, you know what? I'm having some ads on my YouTube channel and, I don't like watching the ads. So what do? And they just, their buddy says, hey, just go to download this extension and you can kind of just ad block, or, the other folks will maybe just say, hey, just get YouTube Red or get the premium and they don't have any ads. So there's a lot of different
yeah.
ways to get around that, but you're not going to just have that done for you. You have to literally do it at least
Well, we
once.
would never do that though. We would never betray YouTube. But this just it's a good example though, right?
Yeah.
Like you and I would never go against YouTube.
I would
Which is
buy
great.
YouTube Red. I mean, I have a subscription to YouTube Red
Yeah,
on multiple
me
accounts,
too.
which is
Yeah,
a
I
solution to
give
the
them
ad
money.
problem. Yeah.
I give them as much money as I can in a legitimate way.
In
Yeah.
fact, I
So
have some taxable donation, like tax-free donations that I've given to YouTube
yeah.
just because it feels like such a great company.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But
Same. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would never betray them. But yeah, I
But
know what you mean. No, yeah,
back to what I
absolutely.
was saying. After I was getting my fourth vaccine
Yeah.
because it's safe and effective and everything,
Yeah.
and it slows this as a spread. It doesn't stop the
Yeah.
spread, but slows the
You can
spread
just get the vaccine.
of COVID. Right. So you just do
Yeah.
things. You actually can just do things. So
Yeah.
back to the ad thing, different context. Right. You're thinking, how do I do this? How do I set that up? I mean, there's somebody out there that's done it before, and yeah, you can just copy paste things. But I want you to start thinking in the frame of how do I do this, not how do I copy paste it, because then you're going to be able to iterate on it later. And I'm going to bring up the oil change example. When I was 14, 15, my stepdad taught me to change the oil, and yeah, of course, we could have just went down to Midas and done kind of the China situation where and I say the China situation is like because last week we talked about the inefficient way to do things is sometimes like more is actually more efficient. We're offsetting the cost of importing goods from China that we can actually just build here. And that's because we're allowed to have child labor in China, but we're not allowed to have it here. So it's like, okay, let's just do that. But
Yeah.
why would you go to Midas when you can just do the thing, right? I mean, that's
Yep.
arguably the only answer is because your time is more valuable. But in reality, like a lot of these things that you're telling yourself that your time is more valuable for, it's not really that valuable. I mean, it really isn't. So for me, it's like changing my oil. I'll do it. I'll do it. That's one of those things that I will do. But I also see the argument for going to Midas and then having them do it. However, I do think everybody should learn how to do that because Midas is not going to exist forever. You shouldn't be beholden to these systems because you need to be able to just do things. So, talk to me
Yeah.
about how you've ever went from a situation of copy paste mindset into more of a just do things mindset and how it helped you in the long and super long 5 year, 10 year horizon.
Yeah. So a great example I can think of. So my one of my YouTube heroes that I love a lot, watch a lot of his videos is Sam Sulek, right? And like you and I make a lot of references to him, and in a bulking context, in a cutting context, whatever context we're in, we're going to be referencing probably Sam Sulek quite a lot. But he's a perfect example of just doing stuff. So there's a good contrast you could find between there's like more quote unquote like science based, like fitness. I won't mention anybody, but there's like science based like fitness YouTube channels who really talk about stuff, and it's an angle that you're interested in, if you're interested in like reading studies and whatever the latest science is on whatever the case is, and then going in and getting your vaccine right after that. But like basically, there's two different ways to approach this kind of problem. Probably any problem, but we'll just stick to this for example. So Sam Sulek does this thing. If you're not familiar with him, he's a bodybuilder, and he does this thing where he's always either bulking or cutting. He's always doing one of the two. So he'll spend like I don't know 3 months or whatever he does trying to gain as much weight as possible. So he's eating a lot. He's in the gym pushing the weights up, like the numbers going up, and he's intentionally overloading on calories so that he's building more muscle. And then at the end of the 3 months, he'll do the reverse. So he'll keep going to the gym and lifting, but he's eating less so that he's not able to gain any more muscle. He's just trying to maintain the muscle he has and then lose body fat. And the point of that is, the theory anyway, and probably is true if you look at his results. It's easier to gain muscle like that and then keep it while losing fat. And then every time you lose fat, you're going to be like bigger, than you were before. So he's always doing that anyway. The reason I tell you that is because you have to strategize for each context, bulking or cutting context, right? And now I'm interested because I'm cutting. I mean, I've been cutting for a long time, and I probably will be for a long time. So I'm interested in like the cutting content. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever be bulking, but maybe one day. But anyway, if you look for information on like dieting and fat loss on the internet, you're going to find a lot. In fact, I think the vast majority of the conversation, even on forums and stuff, is going to be this like sciency, like very high-minded, almost abstract application of like scientific principles to dieting and health and stuff. So it's like, oh, make sure you're getting your nutrients. You got to eat vegetables. You got to eat blueberries. You got to make sure you're getting exactly 1,800 calories. If you're supposed to be at a deficit of like, let's say you want to be in a deficit of 300 calories. If you go any lower than that, you're starving yourself and you're gonna die, right? That's the context of like the science, because apparently the science has said that if you're at too much of a deficit, then you're going to be malnourished and die, right? And that's probably true if you're like skinny already,
Right.
But anyway, if you're fat, it's a different question, right?
Right.
So Sam Sulek does this thing where he just does stuff. So my favorite types of videos of Sam Sulek are his like full day of eating, or when he goes to the store, and just to watch how he grocery shops. There's no This guy doesn't read studies, right? And I say that in a very complimentary way. This guy, I don't know if he's ever read a scientific study in his life, or if he has, it's like he doesn't really care that much. What he cares about is what's going to get the results. So he goes to the store and he looks at the back of on the label, the nutrition label, and he says this has this many calories, this many grams of protein, this many grams of carbs, this many grams of fat, and then he makes his decisions just based on that. and it's so stripped down, it's so simple, it's so simplified, and it's very easy to follow along with him. Like you can even see the meals that he cooks, there's nothing complicated about it whatsoever. Like one of the recent videos he did, his meal was like diced ham, but like egg whites to a certain amount of grams of protein, right? That's how he doesn't measure the egg whites based on the number of servings. It's just I'm going to put this many egg whites until it gets to this level of protein. And then he did like I don't know, he put something else in there. But anyway, he breaks it down into the most simple possible components, and then he just does that thing, right? There's no, like I said, there's no scientific study. He's not doing a double blind study in a laboratory to find out what the best way to lose weight is, right?
Well,
He's
he
just
is the
saying
study.
this is what works.
He actually
He
is
the
the
study.
he's the experiment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and I like what you said there, and I'm going to kind of pick up, not pick apart, but pick. Yes, I'm going to yes and it a little bit. Basically, you're bringing up the grocery haul and the all day of eating. Like those are just do things mindsets, and that's comparing it to like the DEXA scan, the min maxing, the TDEE and stuff like. And here's the thing. Here's the secret. Both of those are better than the third option, in my opinion, which is the copy paste mindset. So the DEXA scan, the TDEE stuff, like at least that gets you in the door, and you're saying, okay, I'm thinking about a context in which I'm thinking about the right stuff. I'm not the guy on the couch that says, "Bro, it's actually about blueberries." No, I'm way past that guy.
Yeah.
But I'm still not quite at the do things level. Now let's back it up though, because if you're there, you're already 50% there. If you're at the copy paste mindset, and I'll give you an example of this: keto, Atkins, veganism, carnivore diet. These are the copy paste mindsets, and I'm gonna steel man them a little bit at first because they're easy to implement. Right? It's like, oh, I don't know, I need to lose some weight. What do I do? Carnivore. Done. Like that's a one word answer. It's a copy paste mindset. It's a chat GPT kind of get it not after it but get before it mindset. And I have it does the job. It does the job in some cases, which is why it kind of gets addicting into this negative feedback loop of, hey, let me copy paste my way through life. Let me autocomplete my way through life, and to a point where people are telling me, hey, don't learn anything at all because you could just copy paste, you could just tab complete everything. And now you're at a situation where you're 30 years old and you don't even know how to change a tire. And if we walk the pendulum back a little bit, if I tell somebody I'm doing a carnivore diet, that's in the context of a social, let me get some social points with this person, because like there's no way I'm actually doing a carnivore diet. I'm doing my own version of what I consider to be like a good diet, happens to be heavily meat based, and that's because I just do things. So I do like a Sam Sulek style where I'll do a grocery haul, I'll track everything. I'll do to an extent, like I don't need to track anything anymore because I've done things so much that I kind of know what it is by eyeballing it. But if you're starting out and you're asking me, hey, like, do I copy paste or do I just do things? I'm going to say just do things every time. You're not going to ask me if you should just do things, though. You want that copy paste. And I'm saying to differentiate you, the viewer, from 99% of other men on the planet, just do things. So, and that will get you set up to where you're going to be kind of like Sam Sulek, who is the experiment. He looks at a plate of, unironically, he does this all the time. He looks at a plate of chicken and rice and stuff, and he says, that's probably 100 grams of carbs, 40 grams of protein, 48 grams of fat, maybe. He'll give you a spitball answer, and it's going to be kind of close to what it is, and because he just does things. So, kicking it back over to you, have you ever thought of the pros and cons of like setting up your own Linux system or something ridiculous like that, where it's so unnecessary because you can now just plug and play like a Windows machine, just click everything, GUI everything. But can you understand like why just doing that sets you up and differentiates you from everybody else to a point where if somebody else in your neighborhood or somebody else in your house has a computer issue, they're going to come to you because you've just done things. You've done the thing. So kicking it over to you for that.
Yeah. So I've definitely, I mean, I've talked to you about that a bunch of times. I've never actually done it. Like in terms of the operating system, I'm still a copy paste guy, right? And it's not optimal. But I can think of another example too. So actually, I can think of many as we're talking about this. A good one is building your own computer, right? So if you're a nerd, you've probably watched. I mean, if you're watching this, there's a good chance you're a nerd, right? And maybe you've built your own PC. But if you haven't, you should do it. You should do it at least one time. And it's another thing. I think everything we talk about here, the copy paste method, it's not like there aren't pros and there's no pros there, right? Like it clearly, if you don't want to take the time to find the components, get a good deal on them or whatever, and then sit there and watch Linus Tech Tips and teach you how to build a computer for 2 hours or whatever, and then deal with the frustration, because there's a good chance it's not going to turn on and you're going to have to troubleshoot, and it's going to be really stressful because you spent a bunch of money on this thing. And then, but when it turns on finally, you're going to be like, oh, nice, I just did that. You know, like I built the PC I have right now. I've been using this PC for like, I don't know, probably like 8 years. I've had it forever, and I built it, and it's like it's not the first one I built, but that it's a feeling of satisfaction. But it also it's like empowering to you, right? So another example I was thinking of um, is well, actually no, this is, so I don't have an example, but I have a more general way to talk about this. So basically, the society we live in is extremely comfortable. Like we're very advanced, you know, and that's again pros and cons, right? The pros are you don't have to worry about going and hunting to eat your meal for dinner, right? You don't have to worry about building a house. You don't have to worry about, you know, literally almost anything that our ancestors had to deal with. So basically, our ancestors were forced into living life like just doing it. You know, there was no like, yes, there was people around to teach you stuff, but you still had to figure things out by yourself. You had to figure out how to fish. You had to figure out how to hunt. You had to figure out how to build a house. And so like your foundation wasn't there. Like I guess the way I would think about this is we live very high on the pyramid, right? If the bottom of the pyramid is our basic needs, those are knocked out. Like we do not have to worry about those in our modern society. You literally have, you know, I think about this all the time. When I go into my bathroom and I turn on the sink and the water just flows out of it, like I think about if I lived 4,000 years ago, how insane this would be, right? Like I can just go to a room in my own house, flip a faucet, and there's fresh drinkable water pouring out of it, and like so much that I couldn't even go through. I could just I don't even think about how much water's in there, or if I'm gonna need more, or if it's clean, or whatever. There's just an infinite amount of water in my freaking bathroom, right next to where I take a shit. You know what I mean? Like our ancestors did not have these types of luxuries. Now, what that does to us is it makes you complacent. It makes you softer, right? Because that's the copy paste mindset that we're all dealing with. You know, it makes you feel more afraid of things because you don't have to worry about where your water comes from. So if you did have to, you'd be completely helpless in that, and you know that, right? So that applies to other things. Like if it's your oil change, you don't have to know how to change your oil. You don't have to know how to do that. So you're sort of afraid of anything related to your car, period, because you know even just this very simple thing, maintenance that I have to keep up on, I don't know how to do it myself.
Mm.
This applies to everything else. So when you decide I'm going to be a guy who just does things, what you're doing is you're giving yourself this mindset that I'm going to figure stuff out myself. You
Right.
know, I'm gonna whatever needs to be done, I'm gonna know how to do it. When I go to the freaking car mechanic and they're trying to sell me on something, I already know what it is because I'm a guy who does things. I may not be a car guy, but I know stuff because I've forced myself to know stuff.
Right.
So it's like I'm up here high on the pyramid, but I'm intentionally like digging deeper into it, going down more to the base layers where I have my own personal foundation that's much sturdier, and I'm less afraid of things. I'm less reticent to start just doing things. You know what I
No,
mean?
and I like that, and I like the comfort, convenience kind of aspect of it because that is a important thing to double click on. There is a copy paste mindset that goes along with comfort and convenience, and I myself, of course, am guilty of this. I buy a grass fed Wagyu or whatever the fuck from Whole Foods. Can't make that
Yeah,
myself. Not literally, by the way. That's a joke, but in that context of you don't have to go hunt your own food. You don't have to go. I mean, like you said, you don't have to go. You're not building your house. You're not getting your water from a well unless you're Farmer Joe, which he's
right.
definitely a just do things guy. So there's always going to be
Yeah,
somebody who knows about chords and knows things about that. That's way past your level, but it should be inspiring to you that there are people out there that literally do build their own house, or they do kind of go out there and get the water from the well, or they do kind of hunt. They go hunting for their own
yeah,
venison and they put it in a freezer because those are the guys. And it's not even that crazy of a concept. We don't. I'm not going to sound. I don't even sound that crazy now after 2020 to say those are the guys that are going to survive the next kind of situation that we're going to go through.
yeah,
And it happens.
yeah,
I mean, you go to the store and there's nothing there. You're beholden to when that store refills itself. So, talking about something that's not on a 5, 10 year horizon, but more of a daily life situation, you mentioned building your computer. Now, when your computer has an error, 90% of people, not people that are watching this, but 90% of people, maybe even more, will say, "Oh, my computer's broken. I've got to go." Well, back in the day, I've got to go to Best Buy and give it to Geek Squad, or I've got to call somebody to fix it, because
yeah,
they're afraid of how the machine it operates and it's a system they don't understand it. It's like, oh no, it's a blue screen. But you and most of the viewers too probably fit this, but you specifically because you built your computer, you're gonna say, okay, I built a computer, so what's going on? Are there beep codes coming on? Let me just search 3 beep codes, computer won't start or whatever, and you're gonna have some
yeah,
thing pop up. It says hey, that's a RAM error. Like try to change the RAM slots or just figure it out, and then boom, you're probably the first thing that you find on Google that's is going to work, right? And if it doesn't work,
Yep.
maybe the second, third thing does, and you're going to learn more about the process of maintaining and keeping your system, and that makes you not beholden to the geek squads of the world and what have you. And so I know a lot of people out there are already at that level, which is good. But think about this in other systems in your life that you're beholden to. And let's use the plumbing system as an example. I know everyone here has had an issue with their toilet or their dish. Let's use a dishwasher. If your dishwasher gets clogged up, you're gonna call a guy to fix that, right? Like that's something you're not gonna. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want to do that, but just treat it like it's your computer. I mean, actually, mechanically speaking, it's not as complicated as a computer. Obviously, I mean, you're not involved soldering and doing all like the low level stuff with the computer. You are just kind of Legoing and plug and play because we're at that point where it is pretty simple. But the dishwasher is not
Yeah.
so different. It's a couple valves, couple hoses and stuff. Like there's only a couple points of entry where there could be some blockage. So if you think like, okay, it's 9 p.m. and my dishwasher doesn't work, I've got some dishes I got to do. Let's say you're just don't do them manually or whatever, right? Okay, so you're using the dishwasher, and now are you beholden to like the plumber that is now going to wake up at 9 a.m. the next day? So you got 12 hours until you can't access your dishwasher or whatever, and you're comfortable with
Mhm.
that? Some of you may say yes because I'm copy paste mindset, I'm convenience mindset, and I get that. But for those of you who have that dog in you that are listening, get after it. Go on YouTube. There's a couple of videos. I'll even link one in the description that helped me. But you're going to find out what you need, or even a wiki how. You'll find out what you need to do just by opening the thing up and just spending some time with it like it's your computer. Go in there and
Yep.
drain it a little bit and figure out, hey, there's a piece of plastic right here. That was it. Boom, done. Maybe you're that feel that lucky, and then run it again and boom. And guess what? You're gonna feel like, hey, next time this clogs up, my wife, my girlfriend, whatever, they're gonna think, oh, hey, he can fix it because he did it before. And so like stuff like that, it'll just everything around you is gonna be that computer mindset where building the system teaches you how the system works. And just doing
Mhm.
things means, okay, I need to build a system. Let's say I want to set up a router or a network in my house. I'm going to build that. I'm not going to call Dean from Cox to come in and build it for me. That's convenient. That's double pay. That's copy paste mindset. But I want to know how it works when it fails, I can just fix it. So just doing things
Yeah.
means you can also just fix things. So kicking it back over
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
you. You mentioned convenience. I know there is a pros and cons of this, and there's that line where you're okay. You really shouldn't be doing everything from scratch. What do you think the biggest things right now in most people's lives that they're copy pasting that they could be kind of low hanging fruit just doing?
That's a good question. So anything related to maintenance, anything related to like home maintenance or car maintenance, even your health. So you're probably outsourcing most of those types of things. Your tech support. Um, I would say anything. I would probably stick to that because as you were talking, what I was thinking of is like there are multiple types of guys. There are at least two types of guys, right? Imagine guy number one. All right, he works in finance, right? He's insanely successful because he went to a good school. Now he trades whatever stocks and he's probably makes millions of dollars. Lives in New York City. Came from a privileged house. Never in his life has he had to do a real day of work. You know what I mean? He's never once had to go out and build a house or fix something with his hands, right? Every time he has a problem with his car, he just like buys a new one. You know what I mean? Like or he at the very least he goes to his mechanic and pays him a bunch of money to fix it. Every problem in this guy's life he outsources to someone else to fix for him, right? So what is this guy really doing? I mean, it's like a baby. That's what a baby does. A baby, every problem a baby has, they have to outsource because they're incapable of doing it themselves, right? Now, it's obviously completely different because he is a man and he is capable of doing it himself, but he's choosing not to, right? Unfortunately, there's no difference between him and the baby, right? So think instead of like now the other type of guy, blue collar guy, Farmer Joe, right? Farmer Joe has worked every day of his life. He has no choice. There's, in fact, if he takes a day off, he's going to starve to death. You know what I mean? Like okay, that's extreme, but he needs to be active at all times. He has to be doing stuff at all times. If there's a problem with his tractor, he can't wait 2 weeks for the John Deere mechanic to come out and fix it for him because that's just not an option. He's got crops to harvest and he needs to sell them so that he can support himself. He needs to know how to fix that freaking tractor at the very least when it comes to bare maintenance, like the simple maintenance. Again, he may not be an expert in the subject, so the problem may be above him, his capability, but he's going to damn sure try. You know what I mean?
Mm.
He's gonna figure out what the problem is, and he'll know at that point whether or not he's able to fix it or isn't. You want to be the second guy. You want to be Farmer Joe. You want to have that basic level of like I can do stuff myself, and I don't want to outsource all of my problems like a baby. Okay, once you know how to do it, and you let's say you have a bunch of money and you can pay somebody to fix your car, but you know what the problem with the car is. Even that is an improvement over not knowing how to do it,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because you go to the car mechanic, any mechanic you go to, you don't even know if you can trust them, right? It's like that's another thing. You go to somebody, you're putting your like life in their hands. Like they could come back to you and say, "Hey, it's going to be we got to replace your transmission. It's going to be thousands of dollars," right? And if you don't know anything, you're just going to be like, "Oh, that sucks. All right, fair enough. You know, I guess we got to
Right.
do it." If you know what's wrong with your car, you're going to be able to tell if he's bullshitting you or not. So again, you're empowered, right? So even in this case, even when you are outsourcing, because you've already given yourself the base level of knowledge, you still have a leg up, right? So that's what I would say. Make sure you're giving yourself the foundation. And one other point I'll make on that. When you do stuff like that, when you're a guy who just kind of does things, you're gonna be so much less afraid of stuff. You're gonna see almost how easy stuff is, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
right? The world is built by average people, average regular people, right? Like no shame in that. But the point is that it's nothing super complicated. You're not working on a rocket, all right? You don't work at SpaceX. You're not trying to send men to Mars. You're just trying to fix a car. That car was built by dudes as smart as you or maybe dumber, right? Like they just put the time in and know what to do, right? It's not a problem that's so beyond you. You simply have never engaged with it, and so you're afraid of it. So I would say also this when you like, for example, when you work at a blue collar job. I think I may have mentioned this before. You learn how simple the world is and how what happens like when you succeed, when things get done, it's not because a group of geniuses came together and like the world's smartest minds, you know, brainstormed and came up with this brilliant, innovative solution. It's literally just a bunch of dudes, just like you, maybe dumber, right? Who probably drink, go home and drink at the bar, or go to the bar and drink after work every single day, and then have totally average, regular lives, regular intellects, just doing stuff. And you see that like it's not even necessarily done to a high standard, right? A lot
Right.
of the time it's just get it done, like just do the
Make it
thing,
work.
and it'll work, and that's good enough,
Yeah.
right?
No, and I think a lot of this outsourcing kind of conversation like that you kind of perfectly transition into is it's another layer, and there are layers of sources that should be outsourced, and none of you guys are like at that level. And I'll go where I'm going with this is this: if you have a situation where you're going to the grocery store, right? You're probably buying like meat from a produce area, from a frozen like a meat deli, and a lot of that stuff is just that guy that kind of had that business idea of hey, let me just buy a bunch of meat and just put it in a freezer, and then everybody can come to me and buy it for from here. I don't think that that guy is killing the animal and then harvesting it and doing all that. He's buying it from some butcher that's done all that for him. So even that guy is outsourcing his some levels, but to feed you guys, the plebeians, and me too as well. I go to the deli as well, so this works for me too. But the thing I'm trying to
Yeah.
get at is when you outsource something like this, and then you start going, hey, I need more productivity in my life, and you rationalize it with, hey, it's more convenient for me to go to the store and throw in a bunch of venison in the bag and just check it out. Don't even look at the price, just even self checkout, what have you. Come home and eat it. That's convenient because my time is more valuable because I'm a finance guy, like you were saying. I gotta be making these kind of Wall Street bets and stuff. I'm important, but the problem is that's a slippery slope fallacy, and right now I'm concerned that 5, even 10 years from now, driving to the store will be a marketable skill because of the with the invention of DoorDash and
Yeah.
with the popularity of how that's becoming a thing. Where now you're even outsourcing driving to the grocery store or to Chick-fil-A to get your junk food, and it's like now you're
Yeah.
also paying double for that to a point where that's like going to be a marketable skill at some point in 10 years with these 25-year-old men, like 10 years from now, meaning like they're 15 now, like if they're 25 in 10 years and they don't know how to drive to Chick-fil-A to get their order,
Yeah.
they already don't know how to
Yeah.
order. They already are not going to be able to order because they're already ordering on their phone,
Right.
and they're already outsourcing everything anyway. So think about this. Think about how, okay, I have a problem. My problem is that I'm hungry. is my instant solution, oh, I must be beholden to somebody who can deliver me food. like, like we're talking about
Yeah.
basic stuff like feeding yourself. Just do that. So 50 years ago, there was no DoorDash, there was no any of this crap. You actually had to just do things. You had to go in the kitchen. You had stuff in the kitchen. You had to go make some food for yourself, eat it, etc. It sounds crazy that I'm saying it like this, but that's what it's going to turn into, to a point where you're going to be hungry. You won't be able to like figure out how to feed yourself because your internet's not working, so you don't have DoorDash, or maybe it's too late for you to eat, so you're like, oh, I'll just eat tomorrow. And in a bulking context, this matters. You know what I mean? So yeah, of course, somebody out there in the comments is going to say, well, actually, in a cutting context, that's a convenient thing to be not having access to food, because then you can force yourself to fast. That is a way to solve a problem that is long-winded and not correct, and you know that, and we both know that. I'm not even going to acknowledge that. So figure out how to do things. And I know it sounds crazy to bring up this example of DoorDash as one of them, but that's a very simple one. Ask yourself, how many times have I DoorDash because I don't even know how to cook food? Like, are you a 25 to 30-year-old man who doesn't know how to make a freak meal? Like, you need to be able to do that. Yeah. And the process of learning how to diet, not in a copy-paste carnivore keto Atkins way, is going to teach you how to make freak meals, because that's kind of where you always end up. The road to freak meals is always, everyone goes, okay, let me download FitGenie, or I guess my FitnessPal. Let me download my FitnessPal. Let me kind of go to the store and see, okay, I'm going to track one meal per day. Wow, actually, protein is that many calories. So fat is actually 9 grams per calorie? Is it interesting? Okay, so carbs and protein are 4. Yeah. So you kind of have that little bit of a split. Interesting. So it's 300 calories, but half of it is fat. Okay, I'm going to pass on that. Okay, that looks good. The protein is good on that. Let me see. So you start already doing the thing, and then you're trying to say, okay, let me get into that.
Yeah.
And then 10 years later, I'm going to assume you were consistent. 5 years later, if you're hungry, you're not going to think, oh, I need to DoorDash. That's like my go-to. You're going to think, okay, I'm already have food in the kitchen because I just do things. But the question is, what is it going to be? You're going to be excited about, what freak meal am I going to make today? And so, if you want to go farther on the layers here, when I talk about like that, somebody like Farmer Joe is laughing at us because he's saying, I've got all my stuff hunted. I've got it all being preserved. I've got my 50-gallon freezer. I've got everything I need. I've got my diesel generator. That's, just in case the power line goes out. That's on my own system. Yeah. I'm off grid. I'm not even beholden to roads because I'm so far out in the country. I don't need roads. I've got like chickens that lay my own eggs. I've got all this stuff dialed. I don't have internet. I get my antibiotics in bulk from the Canadian guy who calls me every once in a year trying to sell me Viagra. Like, I got all that stuff dialed. He's not somebody that you want to aspire to be him, but he's locked in, I would say. So he's locked into do things mindset. And I think
by necessity,
he needs to be. And I think if you're in that copy paste mindset, like it gets you far immediately or early, which is at that part of that dopamine instant gratification mindset. But if you're somebody watching this and you have that dog in you, you need to start doing things, and you need to start yesterday. So get involved in that, and you're going to see benefits from that long term, even short term. You'll start seeing benefits. People will look at you differently when you say, "Hey, I changed my own oil." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah, dude, it's just like, make sure you just build the basic skills. That's what you were saying about like the door dashing. Great example. Just we live in a world of conveniences, and this is part of why I'd say it's one of the main ingredients of why we even do this maneuver thing, right? Because all of us men have grown up in a world where masculinity is like not only is it a bad thing, but really you don't need it that much. Like in your daily life, like being a masculine type of man who just does stuff is like not always necessary. Like you don't need to know how to cook, you don't need to know how to hunt, you don't need to know how to build or repair stuff. You don't need to. It's just like the society is designed. And in fact, I'll get philosophical for a minute here. Maybe society itself as a concept is stripping away your masculinity. You know what I mean? Like that's what society does. I mean, I firmly believe that society is for women. Right? That's why society exists. But you live in it too, right? So you're benefiting, quote unquote, from all these conveniences. But think about it, how it's stripping away important parts of yourself that you need to keep, and you need to keep them on purpose, because there's never gonna be a need for you to do it. It's so simple for you to get on DoorDash and order food that you don't need to know how to cook. So teach yourself. So do it anyway. Like, yes, interrogate yourself and find out where are these little things. I mean, I can think of a million little things in my life that I'm like reliant on these conveniences because I simply don't know how to do it otherwise. And don't be that kind of guy that needs those types of things. Just do stuff instead.
Right. And I think building something from scratch, like when we talk about like what I've been into recently is thinking about ways to like build like an entire network. Because there's things like this is kind of hardcore, but most of us have like an iPhone or an Android phone, and you take a picture on an iPhone, you click delete, it doesn't actually get deleted. And we can get into that later. I might not even get into that later, but just you just take my word for it. It's not actually deleted, even if you delete it from
Yeah.
the deleted folder. It's in existence forever. And you try to search the picture, like you can't search the pictures and stuff. Like there's things that are out of your control, right? You just have, and you're beholden to like the updates, and it's like, oh, the new update makes the UI look not. I don't really like the way it looks. So yeah, this is gonna sound hardcore and kind of crazy, but why don't you just build your own way of viewing pictures if that's important to you, which it is because you made that complaint. So if that's important, next time you have a complaint in your mind, say, hey, the pictures on my iPhone are not convenient to look at because the UI is. I don't like the way the UI is. Well, hey, why don't you just
Yeah.
build your own UI? Now, you don't have to go crazy with it, but maybe just get an Android phone and kind of configure that, start with that, or just look into how the process of that goes. And I'm not saying,
Yeah.
write all this code in C and like super assembly, like that goes low level, but if you have an issue like that's similar to that, fix it yourself. And I think you're going to
Yeah.
be not being beholden to Google and being beholden to Apple for everything, and kind of not like figuring out worrying about that stuff is just the beginning of the journey of kind of getting self
Yeah.
sufficient and like getting on track to doing everything yourself. And the reason I bring this up in a network context is when you set up a network in your own house, you're able to do things exactly how you want to. You're not having like you can block spam at the network level. So if you get like a spam email like from somebody that has your email address from some leak of some database or whatever, they're gonna send you all the spam emails and say, hey, I want to like sell you this product, and you're saying, hey, I'm gonna outsource Gmail to block the spam for me because I don't really want to do. It's too inconvenient. Email is kind of a complicated thing. I don't want to do all that. But in reality,
Yeah.
like if I can set up an email server, then you can too. I'm not that smart. Like I'm slightly above average IQ. You probably can do it too. It's not that hard. It's just more about doing it and do it and fail if you want. Because like try to do it, fail, and figure that out. Because then you're
Yeah.
constantly in 100% control and ownership over how you block emails, how you figure out spam, how you deal with all that. And then you even have like some kind of system where you're very, very confident that you know what's going on. So in the networking context, that's why I'm bringing this up today. But in any context, in building a computer, in building, in changing your oil, everything, you know what goes
Yeah.
wrong because you set it up yourself. So I'm just trying to ask you this, I guess. When I mentioned to you like build a Linux system, I think like build a website, and I'll help you do it, and we'll do it together and stuff. But for maybe a project for you and me would just build a simple like website that's just maybe a to do list. And once you kind of go through that, it's because at first you maybe think, oh, that's kind of crazy. Like there's a lot of unknowns there. Kind of sounds complicated, but that's how I feel about certain things that you've done. So I'm like, a lot of unknowns there. It kind of sounds complicated. Let me just offset that to you. And as you said 20 minutes ago, that's correct if you already know how to do it, and you're actually calculating my time versus kind of what I want to do. But
Yeah.
I do think there's value in knowing how to do it initially. And the value in that for me is it removes that unknown fear of, hey, it's so complicated. And it kind of tells you, you know what? The true value of this is this. So now I'm willing to pay
Yeah.
somebody this much to maybe make me a website because I know how to do it myself. I know actually how actually hard it is, or what have you. So I think get into that, and we can as a side project later kind of build like just a simple website. I know you're definitely down to do that, but let's get involved in something like that because that's just a just do things mindset as opposed to a copy paste kind of get
Yeah.
slowly moving in life and the keto Atkins style. I really think there's we're touching a lot of good points here, but that's my main thing right now.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the whole idea because I think it's really useful. And I think hopefully if people listening to the conversation will understand that just doing stuff will actually make your life easier, not harder, right? It seems like the opposite because I'm telling you, we're telling you to go develop all these skills you think you're ever going to need or use or whatever. But like I was saying earlier, it's going to make you understand just how easy certain things are, and also just the idea of getting things done, of accomplishing something, of completing it, will well that alone, that knowledge of like this is what it takes to just do something and get it done, will carry over to anything else you want to do. Your ultimate dreams and goals. You're going to understand like I need to isolate the problem and just get to like the win condition, if you will, just achieve the win condition of whatever this issue is, and then that's what's going to complete it. It simplifies everything actually when you have this mindset and you can sort of develop these skills. So yeah, it's going to make things easier for you.
No, I definitely think it's one of those short term pain, but that pain for if you have that dog in you, Dean and me have that dog in us, so that pain is actually a good feeling.
Yeah.
He mentioned 30 minutes ago that like when you load up like a computer and you're trying to make sure it boots correctly after you just built it, and the first time you do it, and I've never talked to Dean about this, so I'm kind of I know he's going to be able to relate to this, but before this is going to be a fun experiment. You guys are going to see live like his reaction and what I'm about to say. So
Yeah.
when you build your first computer, you're dumb enough to actually build it in its case, everything regs, like, oh, let me just build it in its case and lock everything in and not test anything and fully assemble it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you forget to put on the IO shield, but whatever, that's part two. And then everything's dialed. And then you plug it in and nothing turns on. You're like, oh. So, like, there's even a process of iterating on that where I learned this from my brother, by the way. My younger brother taught me this. After I had been building computers for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, my younger brother, who had maybe done it for 1 year, maybe, had said, hey, why are you building it in the case? And he pulled out these kind of cardboard boxes or shoe boxes that are halfway done, and he put like the motherboard in the shoe box. The video card was plugged into the motherboard. He put like some of the power supply in like a different shoe box, and he kind of just jerry-rigged everything together. He didn't even open the case. He didn't even open it. He's like, dude, make sure it posts like outside the boxes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, that is a like he's in that realm. He is a just do things guy in that realm, which is why he's been able to kind of get after it for that. He's never had an issue with, oh, my computer doesn't work, or my audio is not, I don't know, some issue that's jejune. He's not going to have that problem because he's a shoebox guy with parts. So he taught me that.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, now I'm going to do that, every single time I build a computer. Luckily, recently in the last 5-10 years, like it's so easy to build them that like they always post. But yeah, I mean, when the early stage was happening, like you put your computer together and like you kind of will flip the coin. Is it going to post like regular?
Yeah.
You got to wiggle that stupid like battery cable that plugs into the Mobo. It's like, is that the thing oh, that was it. Or like, oh, that the RAM was on the wrong slot. There's so many things could be wrong. So it's just interesting that like just that level of like, oh, but that feels good though for me. Cause like you and me kind of have this issue where like in a good way, pain like that actually feels good because you kind of overcome it. And it's sort of like working out. Go to the gym, stress, recovery, adaptation. Building your computer is like you're stressing your mental system to say, hey, how much can I really endure? Can I just sit here for 8 hours? Can I sit here for 6 hours and just like kind of really just figure this out? Like, am I going to just stare at the screen and figure this out? Like, you're going to figure a lot of stuff out about yourself when you build a computer or you build like a system by yourself and stuff. And I think like when you built your computer, when it didn't post the first time, like, were you excited to kind of figure, hey, let me just figure it out? Or were you like, oh, I'm just going to give up. I'm just going to offset this next time.
Well, no, I mean, back then, I wouldn't say I was excited. It was definitely more like stress, like, because it's like, it's then you're wondering, like, oh God, did I shock it? Did I destroy some critical component here? It's going to void the warranty, and I just lost $1,000. Like I'm worried. I was really stressed out about it, but I wasn't going to just quit. I'm definitely going to sit there and explore every possible problem that I could be having, and I'm glad I did. I mean, it was a really useful experience. That's probably the first experience I had in my life of like just doing something, and because I just knew it was the thing to do. I mean, you can go buy a pre-built PC and pay twice as much as what the components are worth, or you can just build it yourself. And I knew that, and I knew it was possible. And I'm like, yeah, okay, let me just try this out. And just giving myself that experience early on was really formative, really important. And it wasn't. I didn't even think of it at the time like we're talking about it now. I didn't think of it like this, but looking back on it now, I see that that's the type of mindset you really have to have with all of your problems. That you're just going to figure it out yourself. You're going to endure whatever the case, whatever the thing you have to endure is. You're just going to live with it, and you're going to figure it out. Or you won't. But you'll at least know that it's like not fixable.
No, and I think the issue is like with kids, and I bring this up because there's two kind of levels to this. When you said that you're just going to build the computer and stuff, you're thinking, okay, yeah, that's all good. A lot of these kids, and this is some of the viewers even too, they're just playing Marvel.
Yeah.
Like they're not actually going to be able to do any of this. So the first step of any of this, if you're even listening to this, if you're 42 minutes in, uninstall every video game you own, get that out of your life. That is a way for somebody to keep you maintained. That's all that is. That's a dopamine sink. Yeah. That's a sandbox of a dopamine that's not going to allow you to do anything. And for that one Redditor commenter that says, well, that was 0.01% of those folks are going to be professional esports gamers and turn into millionaire streamers. Go do what you got to do. That's cool and get after it if that's your view. But for the rest of you guys, uninstall all your video games and just do things. And you're going to understand that that's the first step. And why I'm concerned about the youth is because we have 15-year-old kids right now that don't know how to plug a router into a modem. And I know when
Yeah.
you were 15, your mom, you were the guy who had to fix the internet when it went down. Your mom
Yeah.
said, hey, the internet's not working. Hey, my computer's not working. Hey, my cell phone's not working. And not the iPhone, the cell phone with the 9 buttons on it when you have to
Yeah.
text.
The Nokia.
The
Yeah.
Nokia, the Motorola Razr, like,
Yeah.
what do I do, Dean?
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there, like, you think it's a little bit absurd that she's asking you, like, why do you want me to fix your cell phone? I don't know how to make a. And then you kind of figure out what's going on, and you go through the process because you just do things. And you probably didn't identify as a guy who just did things back then, but looking back right now, I'm comparing you to the average 15-year-old now. They download TikTok and they're like, hey,
Yeah.
what's going on here? Oh, that's cool. That's some good slop. Some good slop. What were you saying? That's some great slop. Hold on, let me.
Yeah, I heard there was like there was some college that was giving a class on how to call, like, just make phone calls, like just the psychological skill of like
Yeah,
picking up the phone and calling, and either like ordering food or calling tech support or whatever,
yeah.
because they can't even make phone calls. They
No,
can't
I
like
can't.
that. That's not even a skill. Like, how is that a skill? But they can't do it.
And that's not an
So
exaggeration. Like these 15-year-olds,
yeah,
they don't know how to change. Like they don't know how to fix their router. They don't know how to even unplug the router and say just plug it back in. Like when you're 14, 15, if you're in your 30s right now and you're 14, 15, I know you can resonate with this. Your mom is you're the designated computer fixer in your
yeah,
family. Like, oh, my computer's not working. And like you're the designated computer fixer. What's wrong? Like, did you plug in the monitor? Well, which one's the monitor? Is
yeah.
that the tower or is that the thing that displays? Is that the TV?
The tower.
That's the
Yeah.
tower. Yeah, the tower. So it's kind of like, but
Yeah.
my point is, you got to start doing things. And the aha moment for me was, yeah, when I was younger, when I set up a custom firmware on a router so that my mom could, so I could like kind of make it so that she couldn't maneuver the bandwidth of what I was having. So basically, she was using too much internet with her phone. She was using too much of our bandwidth. So I basically make some custom firmware on a router, and I kind of just levered how much bandwidth she had access to. Just doing that whole process. At first, that sounds like whoa. I don't think I'll ever be able to figure that out. Like I'm not Linus from Linus Tech Tips, but once I looked into it, it's 4 buttons. It's like logging into a router, a couple clicks, and boom, done. So it's like that was the aha moment for me. I'm like, if I can do this, I can do the next thing. I can do all this other stuff. So it's like kind of I'm wondering if you had that aha moment like growing up or even in the last 5 years, like related to like writing or even invoicing stuff like we talked about earlier. And talk to me about that. If you had like an aha moment like for you for that.
Yeah, I mean, writing is a good example because I think writing seems overwhelming to many people. They don't think they're good at it. It's almost like math in that respect. Like people say that they're bad at math. So I'm just bad at math. It's like, well, probably because you never do it and you're like afraid of it. You know what I mean? Like, and writing is exactly the same way. So, yeah, I definitely had that realization when it came to that you can actually just do stuff. I'd say with that in particular, if I'm going to speak on that specifically, I would say that the best way to learn how to write is to see how other people write. So you got to read. You know, so like a corollary skill there, where you have to know how to do this thing in order to know how to do that thing better. Um, but that's just an example of like I had this thing I wanted to accomplish, and instead of like I got to go take a college course, I got to have somebody teach me the principles of storytelling, and I got to learn about all the grammar and the syntax rules. As one thing I'll tap on there, like when it comes to writing, there's like two types of people who are involved in writing. Like if somebody is like an editor, don't trust them ever. Like if that's their job is that they edit other people's writing, they're they're not a good writer. You know what I mean? Like that, they don't know anything about writing.
And I'm going
Like
to
that.
pause you for a second. I want to ask you a question about that because I don't really know much
Yeah,
about that. And I'm gonna have to get a guess here. Is an editor somebody whose job is to make it seem like they have a job?
yeah. Basically, they basically take a piece of writing, and now here's the thing: you could work with an editor if you're an author, if you're a writer, and you want to work with an editor. There can be benefit there. Again, it's like those. It's like that pros and cons kind of thing. But if you're a writer, you have the leg up automatically because you've written the thing. So you wrote it and you know how you want it to turn out. So you may go to an editor and say, hey, I'm not sure about this particular section. I didn't know how to do this. I don't know if this kind of rambles on too long. Can you help me with a second pair of eyes and like work on this with me? That can be useful. Okay. But then there's the editors who like work for, like, say they work for a company, right? I'm a copywriter. So I encounter a lot of editors, right? And they don't do any writing themselves, or if they do, then I don't see it. But they're usually there just to justify their job. Like their whole job is to justify their job. You know what I mean? And that sounds like maybe that's everybody's job, but no, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that they'll take something you've written and make an unnecessary edit, or they'll comment on the grammar, right? Or they'll comment on like the style, right? Something that's totally abstract that anybody can say about it. Like if somebody's unhappy with the style, there's nothing I can say objectively to be like, well, this is right or wrong. Like it's just that this is the choice I made as the creative person here, as the writer. This is how I chose to write it, and you're simply disagreeing with my choice. That's it. Like that's not an objective right or wrong kind of thing. So you're editing. You always, in that case, if that's the type of decision you're going to make, there's always something for you to edit, because you could always take issue with my style or my choice of words. You could always take issue. There's not, it's not an objective right or wrong thing. So all you're there to do is chop this up that I've written, and then you chop it up to justify your job and like either make it better or worse, but probably worse, right? Because it's not coherent anymore. Like when it came from one person, there's a clear flow and it's very coherent. When it comes from multiple people, now it's like, it goes askew because there's multiple voices involved here. So it just sounds worse, I think, in most cases.
Right.
So that's an example of like
from not knowing too much about the details of that position. It sounds like to me like in an actual free market world where that's needed, that person would be comfortable saying this is perfect as is, and I don't need to make any edits to it, and that's still something you would want to pay for. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like in a world where it's perfect system, you need an editor, and you want an editor that will say, hey, this is actually just perfectly good to go as is, and I wouldn't change anything.
Yep.
Because then you know that the editor is operating in good faith. He's operating in the faith of, hey, let me actually make this as good as possible, not let me justify my position by making little tweaks. Because you can trick somebody into like kind of, even like in high school and college, if you have a paper, you can literally show somebody a paper and like it's a kind of a psychology test that you guys can perform like on your friends. You can show somebody a paper you wrote and say, hey, I need some proof. Can you kind of give me an edit? Like, can you look at this? They're going to feel obligated to say something. And I get it. It's human nature. Like, oh, hey, you know what? I don't want them to think I just didn't read it. But, in reality, like if you were actually editing it yourself and it was perfect, you wouldn't edit it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good point. That would be, like you said, a sign of good faith. I mean, if you encounter an editor who's actually willing to do that, that's probably somebody you could trust. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things that I'm always skeptical of. I mean, and it could apply to anything. Like a mechanic is maybe a similar kind of thing, right? Like a mechanic, I would say, I don't know this for sure, but I would bet the majority of what a mechanic does is just incredibly simple. Like they're just like taking care of exactly what we're talking about, the types of maintenance that anybody could do, but they just don't bother with it. Like changing oil, changing filters, just simple stuff like that. It's probably very rare that they encounter an actually difficult problem, that they actually need to apply their skills to. So editor is simple, another kind of thing like that. You want to be the kind of guy who doesn't need those types of people. Yeah, that's the key here.
No, and it makes sense because in a context of like in a maneuver context, when you send something over to me as like a draft of, hey, like here's the description for like the recent video, and I look at it like I don't feel the need to convince you that I read it. I just say, I read it. I'm like, oh, this looks good. And yeah, do I sometimes say, oh, do I want to make a change to it? Nothing like from a stylistic perspective, but maybe a logistical thing, like, oh, this link is broken or something like that. Literally, so it's like, but will I offer like a potential feedback and something? Of course I will, if there actually is there. And I think that is because we have like a actual non-marketable. It's just not like I don't need to justify the fact that if you're paying me some kind of money to do the service by giving you some service, right? And that's why a lot of these things should just be done on your own. Not this kind of partnership we have going on, but I'm saying like if you're out there saying, hey, I need to, buy some kind of, I'm going to go to the mechanic. Mechanic, like you said, he's going to probably 90% of his skills is that he can convince you that you need some kind of upsell service on your, your car or whatever, right? So yeah, because he's able to like leverage the fact that you don't know anything about cars. He can leverage that and say, hey, like this is expensive, and like that's how it works. And I'm not gonna knock the mechanic. Like that's good that he's doing that. That he's getting after it. Like he's making a living. That's good. He found his lane. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But it's like, you can be
sales.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of just.
You want to be immune to salesmen.
If you could be immune to salesmen and get out of that copy paste mindset and start doing things today, and I think an exercise for the viewer right now would be, next time you have a problem that gives you some friction, write it down. And think, hey, am I going to offset this to somebody else? Am I going to outsource this? to somebody else, or yeah, I was listening to Tony and Dean the other day, and they were talking about just doing things. Why not just try doing it? Try it.
Yeah.
Like look into start doing it, and if it does take, if you're an hour in and you're like, you know what, there's a lot of electrical stuff here. I'm just gonna offset this. Totally fine. That you learn something. You learn something about yourself. You learn something about the system.
Yeah.
Like that's fine. But at least give it an effort and look into it. I mean, get more curious.
Yeah.
Have curiosity. Curiosity is never going to
That's right.
get you in trouble. That whole phrase of curiosity killed the cat. It's not about that. It's about how you
That was
act
made up by
on things.
feminists.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
we can get into that if you want. I mean, that's
Yeah.
so. I mean, that's. I pretty much just wanted to cover like I had this, because you called me today, so I do want to discuss this whole concept and get it out there. But yeah, anything you want to add to it, like before wrapping up, or what are you thinking?
No, I think maybe just to summarize, when you're the kind of guy who just does stuff, the world becomes much easier. It's going to open up the possibilities in front of you. You're gonna be much less afraid of chasing your goals because you're gonna understand that there is a way to do it. Like if you see that it can be done, there's and if you're totally blazing a new trail in some aspect, I don't even know what that would look like, but in that case, that's maybe something different. I don't know. Like if you're entering some totally new arena, you're trying to invent some new thing. I don't know what that's like. I've never done that. But if you have a goal that other people have already done, like if you want to write a book, just start doing it. Just do it. If you want to change your oil, just do it. You know what I mean? If well, no matter what it is, once you have that mindset, you're going to understand how much more simple things are than you make them out to be in your head. And you're going to get out of your head. I think maybe that's the key point here. Get out of your head. Stop worrying about is this something above your skill level. Just take the bite, and then you'll find out as you chew on it whether it's too much or not. You can always spit it out, but at least you're getting after it. You're putting in the work. You're empowering yourself. That's the key thing here. As a man, you got to empower yourself. Nobody's going to do it for you. Don't let the conveniences of our modern life suck that away from you.
Right.
Keep that inside.
Well put. And I think only thing I'll add is that convert your copy paste mindset to a just do things mindset before it's too late. I think that's the biggest issue here is that if you continue to copy paste and autocomplete your way through life and say it doesn't matter, I don't need to learn anything because AI is going to make everybody's job totally irrelevant. Like that may happen, but if it doesn't happen and you're the guy who succumbed to that already, you're going to be useless in 5 years. You're going to be useless in 3 years. You already are probably useless, honestly.
Yeah.
So get out of that uselessness and become useful. Become somebody who, if an elevator is broken and there's 10 people in the elevator, become the guy who is the person that everyone says, hey, let's look to you. What do we do? Be the guy who is that guy in that room.
Right.
You can do that. I know you can. Like, it's really easy to do. Just the only thing that you need to do to make yourself different than everybody else is just do things.
Yep. I agree.
So,
perfect.
With that, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below. We're gonna want this video to blow up, so just get it out there and check out. We're gonna have more regular content. This is a bonus video, so we're gonna have more regular content on Monday. So,
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for watching, guys.
all right, peace.